Hello, everyone. Obviously, as I'm a short person, you had issues seeing me before. Now I'm sitting, so it's even harder. But you'll hear me. So I'm standing among the greats and obviously the taller. Yeah, sitting, obviously. For some people, it might seem that I'm standing because I'm short. But yeah, so we have, since this is somewhat improvised, it's not improvised because they know everything they're talking about. It's an improvised panel because obviously we had a different story for today, but we're going to talk about, and I'm going to use the word versus, but it's not necessarily versus. It's going to be product companies versus, quote unquote, versus services companies, right? So the differences, the things that are in common, how one can live or can't live without the other. Thank you very much. And obviously, trying to, in a way or another, demystify the grudges some people might hold against different. One more water, I think, was here. Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with me, not because I'm part of the panel, but because I've been in both sides. I've been working in the industry for about 13, 14 years, and I've started from the bottomest bottom, not a real bottom, but I started as a sysadmin slowly but surely and went through different types of companies, from professional services to product companies, and I felt a lot of differences. So it's not like you can work in both sides and say, okay, I'm a software developer. Just because I learned from one, I can surely understand and do everything that's necessary in the other. I learned a lot of steps in professional services, which helped me better understand potential processes in a product company, after which I could have focused more on delivering value for the actual product that I was trying to build, not building necessarily, and kind of understood what they were trying to achieve. So, I think we can start again. I talked about myself, it's easy enough. So, I'm gonna start from left to right. Obviously, this panel is gonna be about 30 minutes, so do with that information as you may. But obviously, we want everyone to be able to speak. Yeah, and keep it short, but very informative. So, uh, I'm gonna go ahead and start with Andrei over here. And obviously, I have a set of questions which I won't touch because obviously the discussion is gonna flow naturally. And Andrei, please, over here, you're gonna pass the mic after you're done. And I'm gonna tell you perfectly. And from your point of view, you can start talking about what core, again, this is going to be a 10,000 feet overview of the situation, not extremely in detail. And it's going to be very simple. The main differences from your point of view between product and services companies when it comes to engineering mindset. Microphone.
You write code in both types of. The client is different. In service companies, the client is some manager, some product owner, or somebody who will benefit of the application. In product companies, the client is the end user. And this is a really interesting dynamic from my point of view. I don't want to get into the details. I mean, we can talk all day about what this implies actually, but as we have only 30 minutes and there are some 5 of us, but this is one of the big differences.
Awesome. So mainly it's the client. It's either a client you know or you don't know, but obviously, like as a follow-up question, do you feel for you, obviously for the next panelist, of course, based on this key difference that Andrei described, it's also about the customer, the client, the end user. What do we usually get from the end user is feedback if something is right or wrong. How could we treat or how could we see the differences between one type of a company and the other when it comes to feedback, to product feedback, and feedback in general?
Very interesting. So I think in services company, you get faster feedback because you work kind of daily with the client or you deliver directly to the client, while in product company, you don't get it so fast, but you get it like the real users So it's a different type of feedback, but it takes a while until, and you have to understand it differently when it's coming from the in services companies, from the management or from the company ordering the product for you, because they might have different values than in product companies. So they will judge. The feedback might be about your speed of development, the quality, the approach, communication, relationship, while in a product company, the feedback is about functionalities. And people will not care about who developed the product and how they build it. While in services, it's a lot about relationship with who developed, how you approached. It's more towards the development team.
Awesome. And a question again also for you. How do you think the feedback framework should look like generally, so that everyone involved knows that the feedback is valuable, rather than someone just saying, hey, that doesn't work for me, I don't like that color or whatever? How would the framework of valuable feedback look like in order for everyone, also the customer, to be educated, but also us to be able to receive good feedback? How would the communication stand, and what would be the differences for a product company and also for a services company?
There are such different worlds that you cannot have the same framework. I mean, you'll have totally different frameworks. I think in a services company, it's about the process that you have in the development, while in a product company, I think it's more about marketing, product, other channels that you get the feedback and is filtered. I'm speaking a lot from the perspective of the developer. As a developer, you get feedback a lot filtered through the channels of product in a product company, while in a services company you get it pretty directly from the client that interacts with you. So that would be on short. Otherwise, yeah, it's a whole philosophy around how you get client feedback. So yeah, I don't see one framework fitting everything. It's actually two different worlds.
Awesome. So I'm looking at feedback and usually deadlines in somewhat of an equal kind of balance, because whenever someone offers feedback, it's the same someone who expects something else from you, and that usually derives moves towards deadlines. And for Ioana, a general question: how do you think feedback and also deadlines and also information coming from top, but not the top management layer of the company, but rather also the customers, how does it affect and how can it affect different types of companies for the actual people who execute and implement things? For example, a designer.
Yeah, I think from design is quite different because we're involved in different processes, right? So for instance, like in the product company, you're like really involved into actually understanding the problem and like the whole discovery phase of a product. So the feedback is generated inside the team is not so top down in a way. I feel like in a service company, like you're kind of given these problems and you're not part of discovering them as much, right? So like you're just handed over, like fix this thing for me, sort of, many times. And it's a matter of depth, like of going fast and shallow versus going deep and a bit slower, I guess. But in general, I am thinking of feedback. I guess what comes top down in a product company is more like bigger overarching company goals or like things like that you have to align to, and the feedback is the metrics of like what you deliver, right? But in general, it's like inside the smaller teams that this feedback is given, and we're very close to the users, so like we get that feedback very directly from our users. In a service company, you're not as close, and it just feels a bit more disconnected many times. So I think that's one of the main differences.
Awesome. So I'm gonna ask Jeff the next question, but before that, I'm gonna ask you to make some noise. But wait a minute, it's going to be two types. So first, do you feel as an engineer, whoever's an engineer over here, whatever kind of engineer, what do you prefer? Being closer to the client and getting the brute feedback, or having a couple of layers and sitting back, starting up the washing machine, writing another line of code, and having a chill more life? So who's up for services companies? Okay, I'm so sorry. Services meaning closer to the client. Who's up for closer to the client? Okay. And who's up for closer to the so product companies? Yeah, to the washing machine. Okay, awesome. So more product people in the house. Awesome. So, Jesus, it's more people closer to the bed because apparently either my questions are weird or people are falling asleep. So that's completely on me, obviously. So, Jeff, for you, a question. How do product companies approach innovation differently from service companies?
Oh, I was already talking about feedback. Now you're changing the topic.
You can continue with that as well. It's fine.
Well, actually, I can say a few words about feedback because I've managed teams both at product companies and at services companies. In fact, spent 3-4 years at 3 Pillar Global, which I know is big here in Timișoara. And you know, we've talked about the differences, but ideally at the team level, you're looking for the same kind of thing. And if you think about feedback, what do we want feedback on, right? We want feedback if our software is working, if it's creating value, and if you read some of the literature like on lean UX, they talk about, you know, when we look at what we're trying to do with our software, it's really about outcomes. It's not even about, you know, how much money did I make the company. The theory is that if I improve outcomes for people, that all makes money. That's every entrepreneur's dream, right? If I can change people's lives for the better, I'll make some money. But I like that idea of what we really want the feedback on is, did my software have an outcome? And you're right that depending on how many layers are in between you and the person whose life you're trying to change, it can be more or less difficult to get that feedback. If I'm you know, like Ioana said, if I'm contracted as a service company, they've already solved all the problems and they just give me a feature to build. And they say, thank you very, you know, you're going to work with this product owner and they're God, and whatever they say, you do that. And you have no idea, you know, is this thing ever going to get into the hands of the actual user, and am I going to change their lives in the way I hope to? Versus with a product company, ideally you've got some kind of communication mechanism, but you can set up a services company so that you're in contact with actual end users, and I would highly recommend that. I don't think many of you experienced developers really want to be order takers and be told just do it this way because that's what the PM said to do. I think you'd like to see if your software is making a difference in someone's life. So although there are some, you know, implied differences, it doesn't have to be that way. Now, in terms of innovation, which is what you actually asked, I'm going to be all politician and answer a different question. It comes down to, you know, innovation. You can't make it happen. It's an insight. It's an idea. It's where someone's skill meets someone else's need. And so you have to just create enough situations for innovation to happen. And I would go back to that same idea. The farther away you are from the person's life that you're trying to impact, the harder it really is to innovate. If I'm just working with a PM that's giving me orders, you know, I can innovate on the framework, right? I can innovate on but if I go and say, hey, don't you think this color would be better than this color? I mean, that's not innovation. Innovation is, what's the person's actual problem? What's the new behavior I want? And how is my software causing that new behavior or not? And if not, what's missing? And you have to be able to watch that. You can't figure that out in advance. You have to be able to watch the process of someone trying to use your whatever you've made, and then, you know, see, is it getting at that problem I thought I was solving or not? And then if it's not, that's when you're ripe for an aha moment.
Awesome. I got more than I expected from the answer, which is awesome. Thank you very much. And for Paul, a question. When it comes, obviously, we've seen small companies, big companies. As engineers, we get hired, we get the money. We don't care. If we get some benefits, perfect. But when it comes to a somewhat of a business perspective, what role does scalability play in product versus service-based business models?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think, now I'm a little biased, you know, Marius and I run a services company, and I've actually, truth be told, I've never worked at a product company. That's not entirely true, but I'm on the sales side, all right? I'm not an engineer, so it's a much different perspective. But so with that in mind, as you know, when you think about scaling out your organization, having a services company where you've seen lots of different experiences, not just one way of doing things. So you walk into a product team, I'm imagining that there could be a temptation like, hey, this is just how we do things, right? And we notice this when we have our own engineers, when they leave one project that they've been on for a year, 2 years, and they go to a different engagement, you know, it broadens their aperture, right? It puts them back into an uncomfortable position. And it really, I mean, uncomfortable things make you better. And so having a whole team of people who are constantly challenging themselves and seeing different ways and experiences of building product can obviously bring a stronger overall experience. And so from scaling, it's not just about pure people and having lots of people, and that's the challenges of a services company, hey, you want to have more and more people. It's also having stronger talent, different, broader experiences, ultimately for the end client, not only in a services company, but for the end user of the product.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. So I'm going to take the mic over here, and I'm going to keep it. Yes, please. Absolutely, Andrei.
Yes, so difference is on product companies, you don't get to stay on bench. The work never ends in product companies, which brings me to my next point. One huge difference is that in services companies, you get to switch projects, which is really good. I mean, can be really beneficial because you get to get this breadth of experiences, this wide range of experiences to work with different people in different scenarios, with different clients, different technologies. So all this variety and diversity in engineering, it's really going to help you on the long run. So if I would recommend like somebody who started, I don't know, working in tech, I would definitely recommend at some point to work in services companies because all this experience that you learn inside these companies is definitely worth it, and yeah, it's definitely worth it. That's huge. That's a huge thing. In product companies, you know what technologies you're going to use, and it's not going to change anytime soon, right? You know what you are building, the domain that you are working in, and the technologies will stay there for a long time. It's difficult to change. In services, is not that. Is not the case.
You want to comment to that?
One thought that keeps coming to mind on this whole topic is in a product company, you're more likely to have to live with the consequences of your actions. You know, that a services engagement can be, you know, time-based, although, you know, I know VSP and 3Pillar have these engagements that have been going on for years. So in that case, you're sort of in a similar situation, but definitely in a product company, you're your own consumer of your code a year down the road or 2 years down the road. And so while, yeah, there is that aspect of you know, technology tends to change more slowly. I'm not getting to experience many new frameworks. You also do have the opportunity to do this longer-term thinking of, okay, if I had a year to improve this code base slowly over time, well, how would I do that? And you have that luxury in a product company. You might not have it in a services company.
Can I make a comment to?
It's perfect.
Who's the MC now, Bogdan? No, I think the other thing too, just going back to your core question of the differences between the two, it's interesting on the services side, you're not totally in control. Like I like the idea of on the product side, you have much more ownership, and we're closer to the ownership, and you have much more control. Obviously, there's lots of different services companies and lots of different ways of structuring your services companies, order takers versus, you know, maybe more holistic product partners. But you have this additional dynamic in the services company of you're dealing with, you know, end users and clients and kind of building code and shipping code, but you have, in ways, you have two clients, right? You have the end user that you're trying to satisfy, right? Someone to love your product, but you have an actual client there as well. And so there's this dimension of not just the technology and the code and the feature set, but also a human dynamic. and people are complicated, right? People are complicated. So you might, by the book, be building everything the right way, but if the experience meaning you and your client is awful, and you're yelling at them, or they're yelling at you, or there's tension in the midst, you're going to fail, right? So you have this whole team dimension, and now you have that, of course, in product companies as well, but it's a little bit harder when you're not badged employee. You know, in our cases, we work with a lot of American companies, so you have this dynamic of overseas, not sitting with the people, and you have to feel like you almost have to earn the trust. You have to earn the right to be there, right? And that just adds for a different level of complexity.
Perfect. Everyone gets it. Perfect. Perfect.
And I also just feel like in the product team, like a bit of the difference is that you actually have domain experts inside your team, right? So like when you work in a services team, you work with your product team, and everyone else is your client. But like here, you actually have these cross-functional teams that really help understand the depth of the field in general. So
That's awesome. So for Marius, given the fact that we kind of cross-check, compare one versus the other, it's if you look at it a bit more in detail, you kind of realize that it's one would not exist without the other. Could you talk a bit about the relationship and the need from one company needs the other type situation in the whole delivering something ecosystem?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a very good point that nowadays you cannot build anything in vacuum. You need services to build a product company, and services need products in the end to have a meaning for their existence. So yeah, and sometimes you are not even aware about all interactions. You are consuming those services. You are using open source or all kind of libraries that were meant for product companies to build something. So yeah, really good point that they are actually working together and building on what Andrei said, that you need to have both. As an engineer, you should have both experiences because each shows you a different phase of software development and helps you build a complete understanding of the ecosystem. What it means getting feedback from end users, what it means working with somebody that is expecting a delivery from you as an external partner. So yeah, they really go hand in hand, as you said. I cannot add more than that it's clear, something that should be seen together.
Awesome. Because usually people kind of tend to make a difference more than we should. But at the end of the day, we're all engineers, or we're all people who are leading engineering companies, and we try our best to, at the end, make money.
As Vlad said, it should not be A versus B or
Exactly.
A versus non-A. Yeah, yeah. It's they go hand in hand over time and in the ecosystem.
And also, so the next question is going to apply for everyone. But since Marius has the mic, he's going to continue. So my question is, again, this could take a couple of minutes. We have like 18 more minutes left. Do it as you please. 2 minutes left? Oh my God. So perfect. How do you think the future looks for product versus some service companies in the IT industry? This is kind of vague. It's generally vague, but obviously each one of you has like a different role. Hence, your point of view would be different on how this relationship in the future affects you.
Yeah. The way I see it is that more and more new companies focus on the problem that they want to solve and less on how to solve it. There are all kind of tools and to help you solve that, and all kind of services. And the same I see it product versus service companies. I see people being domain experts and looking to have their problems solved, and employing service companies that are technology experts and will build the product for them. They will come with the business, with the understanding of their end users, and will not want to think so much about learning how to manage a software team, what is the software development process, learning everything about that, but rather focusing, okay, we know our specific business, it's telecom, it's whatever domain, I'm focusing on that, and I'm gonna find a partner that will build a product for me, because I need to be focused really on solving my business problem. That's how I see a trend in the near future, or more distant maybe. But yeah, that's my perspective, my subjective one.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think we're going to go next with Ioana, but it's totally fine. We can switch after that. So what's your take on both the future in tech, but also keeping in mind the way we as engineers or designers or whatever role we have, we behave within those different types of companies? How does the future look like for us?
I mean, I think also from a design perspective, it's a bit harder to be to work as a service, because I think it's more important, especially for designers, to be closer to the problem, right? And the way I see it, probably like the future is something like smaller product teams and outsourcing, probably more like need-based sort of tech, maybe. But as a designer, I think you should stay embedded or like be as close as possible to the actual product team that figures the problems out.
Awesome. I think we go next with Andrei, so then we can have, please, do like whatever you got from my question. I know you're gonna add on top of it with your own layer of understanding. No,
No. I totally understood this. I totally understood. Yeah, I think. I think there is enough space for everyone. So just imagine like preparing something to eat. Like sometimes you want to order, right? Let somebody else prepare the food for you. Get a service from somebody. Sometimes you want to prepare your own food, right? So there is space for everybody. There will always be the need for services and for in-house development, and so I think, yeah, it's. I don't believe in trends because trends change. So
that's an awesome analogy, and I hate you for it because right now I'm hungry. Thank you very much, Andrei. So, Jeff, please, your take on the future. Again, engineering, technology, product, service, all together.
I have no idea. As a CTO of a product company, I will always want to use a service partner. I would never want to not have. I would never want to have just all in-house development teams, because you benefit from outside expertise. You benefit from the ability to kind of scale up and scale down more easily. And then, so I think, like I've been working, as you'll hear in my talk, I've been working with BSP for 5 or 6 years, and I feel like we kind of have the benefit of both, right? I'm working with a services company, but many of the engineers on the teams from BSP get to feel like they're working in a product company.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add one small thing. Obviously, I think the future, who knows, and it's obviously who knows what's going to happen with AI and how this all works in this whole environment. Of course, I'm figured you want me to say that, but the reality is that I think my friend Radu Milosh and I were talking, and before the event, and he was before the talk, and he said something like, everything's changing so quickly, right? Everything's so rapidly changing. I think that helps the services companies because we're seeing lots of different things and trying to stay ahead of the curve, and we have to stay relevant for our clients. Ultimately, it's going to help all of us, right? So I am excited about the idea of being in a services company and being able to try things and have the freedom to try things, because we can, right? And so hopefully, I think that will accelerate some of the learnings and ultimately, of course, benefit everyone.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. This was an awesome panel.